I recently spent $20,000 on coaching. I hired a business coach. This is basically someone who just looks at your situation and tells you what to do or how to think about where you are. And I was kind of stuck in my business. And so I thought it is now time for me to hire someone to tell me the things that I need to do. I spent $20,000 and it was completely worth it. And I want to share in this video my biggest takeaway that actually happened in the very first session of our coaching. $20,000 bought me 6 sessions, but the very first session, I feel like I got my money's worth. I still did the other sessions because, I paid for them and they were great. But there was an insight that happened that shifted my entire business and my entire year, and I am still reaping the benefits from what I discovered in that very first session. And so in this video, I want to share with you what that insight was and how it can apply to your business, because this isn't just about me and what I learned, it's about you and how you can take the $20,000 that I spent on coaching and maybe benefit from the principle that I learned, because there's something in there for you as well. My name's Lane. I love to help people replace their 9-to-5 income with a thriving online business without having to hustle and grind or build a large social media following. You don't have to do any of that. In the way that I teach it, it's far more simple, way more streamlined, and it's accessible to everybody. You don't have to be an influencer. If you want to know my step-by-step plan to get to your first $1,000 a month in your online business, go to lanesebring.com/workshop. This is my free Turn What You Know into Dough workshop, where I'm going to show you the exact way that I built my multiple 6-figure online business. And I'm going to show you how in 4 steps you can build up to making your first $1,000 a month in your spare time. lanesebring.com/workshop. You can watch it today. So earlier this year, I decided it was time to hire a business coach. And one of the things I want to point out is that I am myself a business coach. People pay me to coach them. If you're interested in that, you can go to lanesebring.com/coaching, but that's not really the point of this video. The point is, everybody still needs a business coach. Whether you coach other people or not, you still benefit from getting coaching. And so I'm willing to pay a lot of money to talk to people who know more than I do. And so if you don't take anything else away, just know that you should never stop learning. Tiger Woods has a swing coach, and I'm sure he's better than his coach, but he still has a coach. And so I hired this guy to look at my business. And as I mentioned at the beginning, there was a massive insight that I got from this coaching, but I want to walk you through where I was at this point when I went into coaching and then what the insight was. And I think there will be a lot in there for you. So the first question he asked me, and I'm kind of looking at the notes that I took from our sessions. The first question that he asked me is, he said, "Why did you get into this business in the first place?" And this was important because there was a reason why I got into the business, and that shifted over time. And as it shifted, I started to realize that I was sensing a lot of overwhelm because I really wasn't sticking to my why, like the why I was doing it. So when he said, "Why did you get into this business in the first place?" my answer was, initially, I was just escaping the prison of having a job. This is a huge part of my story. This is something I talk about all the time. But the reason why I started an online business was because I wanted to make as much money on the side as I was in my job. I hated having a job, hated having to have a job. Doesn't mean I hated my job. I hated having a job, and I hated having to have a job. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's not, I didn't hate the people and hate the job and all that. It's just that having to be at a certain place at a certain time and do a certain thing and answer to another person for like when I can take time off, and even having meetings that I have to go to, I just didn't like it. And I was like, is there another way? And so in order to get out of a job, you have to just make as much money as the job makes. It really is a math problem. And at the time, that wasn't a whole lot of money. I was a pastor and I wasn't a mega church lead pastor. I was just a pastor at a church. And so it wasn't hard it wasn't hard to replace that. But it still required more than I was currently making in my online business. I had to like make more. And really when I think about the urgency of wanting to build an online business so that I could escape the prison of a job, I go all the way back to my mid-20s. I was working as an associate pastor, kind of an assistant pastor at a church in the DC area. And I was talking to someone else who was on staff with me at that church. And big church, lots of people on staff. But I was talking to this guy who felt very stuck in his position and kind of unhappy with his job and kind of the situation that was going on at the time. And I was 20 years younger than him or so. He might have been in his mid-40s. I was in my mid-20s. And I said, have you ever just thought about quitting? Have you ever just, he was very overwhelmed. I said, have you ever thought about quitting? And he said, I can't. I have no other way of making a living. And I don't want to go to another church and start all over. So I'm just stuck. And I remember in my mid-20s thinking, whatever I got to do to never be in that position, like I'm going to do it. I have to earn the equivalent to a full-time living on the side, whether it's online business or otherwise, like whatever it takes, legal, ethical, moral, in line with my calling, all that stuff still there. But within those parameters, whatever it takes, I'm going to do it. So when I first got into this, my overarching why was simply, I need to make X amount of money, period. Now, I was passionate about the material. I started a business called Preaching Donkey. I was helping pastors preach with confidence and clarity. I wrote 2 books. I made courses. I had a membership site. I was doing coaching. I loved the work, but the why, like why I did it, went all the way back to, I just need to replace my income. And so I just need to make money. And so I started doing a lot of things. And I started a second brand, my personal brand, this one. I was doing product review channels. I was doing anything I could because I had a lot of different income streams. None of them necessarily on their own were like remarkable and outstanding. But if you add it all up together, it was starting to become something. This was like 5, 6, 7 years ago, starting to become something. And then I got better at it, more training, got a clearer path. The kind of path that I teach in the workshop, I started to sharpen things up. And things got much better. And so when I went into this coaching, paid the $20,000 earlier this year, and talked to my coach, my why had shifted. Now, no longer was I simply just trying to make money. I was making money, making $25,000 a month, making great money. I'm not desperate to make more money. What I want is an impactful business. I want to maximize the opportunity that I've been given to build a lot of wealth over the next 10 to 15 years, impact a lot of people, help a lot of people start their businesses and grow their businesses, change their lives. So that's not just about making money, and it's not just about surviving, it's about maximizing. So I've shifted why I'm doing things. And this is important because I went into this coaching still doing all of the things that I had been doing since the very start. Anything that would make me money, not really focused on my actual goal of maximizing my impact and focusing. And so with that backdrop, he said, what do you want for these next 90 days? We had 6 sessions over about 90 days. And I said, I need to stop doing things for the sake of doing things. I was doing more and more things thinking I needed better teams and automation. So by this point, I had a virtual assistant, I had a social media person, I had hired an agency, and I had an editor. And I was trying to manage all these different pieces. It was kind of getting a little bit expensive and just kind of a headache. And so my thought going into it was, I just need to increase sales so I can manage all this stuff. So my little business, my little online business that started out as a hobby and then turned into kind of a passion project and then turned into like, maybe I can make this replace my income. Then it turned into tens of thousands of dollars a month, had now become this kind of bloated mess where I was making good money, but I wasn't really enjoying myself. I was pretty overwhelmed and trying to keep up with like the fact that I had two competing businesses. And most of it came down to I had Preaching Donkey on one side, where I would help pastors preach with confidence and clarity. And that included content every week. It included making courses, selling courses, doing coaching, doing promotions, all the things that you do with an online business. That was an entire business. And on this side, I had lanesebring.com, my personal brand that you're interacting with here. And that also included content every week, offers. At that time, it was mostly my Kajabi affiliate and cohort style courses. And then I was building my first kind of standalone course. Every single time I would sit down to work on either one of those businesses, I would always be thinking I should be working on the other one. So if I sat down to like make a piece of content for Preaching Donkey, I would think, I'm behind on my Lane Sebring stuff. And then if I sat down to make content about Lane Sebring, personal branding, media, online business content, helping people start and grow online businesses, I would think, I'm behind on my Preaching Donkey funnels. I need to update those. And so I always had this tension and this kind of weight of I should be doing something else because I'm trying to do it all. And at the same time, I also had my product review channel floating around out there in the ether and a team that I was trying to figure out, who do I have working on Preaching Donkey? Who do I have working on my personal brand? How do I make all this kind of work and come together? He looked through everything and he kind of saw where my passion really was. And I think he kind of could see, both from the results I was getting and the passion that he could detect, that my real passion, like what I really wanted to do, was my personal brand, like what you're interacting with here, helping people start and grow businesses that help them replace their 9-to-5 income without hustle, grind, or having to build a large social media following. Like that fires me up. And I think he could see that. But I was also doing Preaching Donkey, which probably looked and felt like an also then. Like I also do this. It's like I do my main thing and I also do Preaching Donkey. And it used to be the main thing. It used to be the thing that I loved. But over time, my thoughts and passions and interests have shifted. And that happens. You may start out with a niche that you love and fires you up. And you think, I'll never love anything like I love this. But over time, like your interests just shift. And for me, I went from doing the business of Preaching Donkey to really, really loving the business of it and showing people how they too can replace their 9-to-5 income by doing this amazing business model that feels like the best kept secret, like that we can make a living from our homes, looking at a camera, teaching other people the thing that we know how to do. It's just amazing. And so I think he could see this. And so he asked me this question. And again, I'm looking at my notes over here. He said, why are you still doing Preaching Donkey? And he told me, he said, look, I'm not trying to there's nothing behind this question. You may have good reasons for doing Preaching Donkey. I just want to know, why are you doing it? And it's funny because when he asked this question, I was like, oh man, this had been on my mind for a long time. Like, why am I still doing Preaching Donkey? But the thought of letting it go was very, very hard for me at that time to deal with. So the way I answered the question, I said, well, there's a sunk cost. Do I really just want to walk away from this? I've been building this since 2014. It was a huge part of my identity. I had spent years building that brand and building that email list, making all that content, making those courses, writing those books. And I'm like, I've been doing this for a long time. What about my calling, right? So I was called to be a pastor. I did that for 15 years. And then I left being a full-time pastor and went full-time into Preaching Donkey, which is very related. It was a business, not a ministry, but it helped people in ministry do their ministry better. And so it still felt like I was living out that kind of very specific calling. So, what does it look like to walk away from that? And so, I should probably keep it, was just kind of my thought, right? I needed to prove what I'm doing at Lane Sebring. That was another thing. I wanted to be able to say, I'm not just one of those guys who teaches people how to make money and that's how I make my money. I wanted to be able to say, hey, I'm not just doing this. Like, I'm also, like, I started and grew a legitimate online business in a niche that's not about making money. Like, that was important to me, and letting that go, even though I was seeing a lot of success with my personal brand, because I'm not just the guy that tells people how to make money. That's not my thing. You will make money. But what I love to do is help people dig down inside of them and pull out, like, what is the thing? What is my unique contribution to an online business? How can I help people with the thing that I know and the thing that I have experience in? I want to come alongside that person and say, let's talk about how you can make an impact and an income sharing this with the world. So that was a hang up. Like, if I get rid of Preaching Donkey, am I just the guy that gets on here and tells people how to make money? Nobody wants to be that. At least I don't. It doesn't feel authentic. But I had to get over that, because that's not what I do. I had to be okay with that. I had a sense of ought instead of what I want to do. So the idea, the thought around getting rid of, or even just walking away or taking a break from Preaching Donkey, would kind of make me feel light inside. Like, oh man, what a burden has been lifted. But then I'd feel, but I ought to keep it, So it was like a sense of ought over what. And his reply to me is, he said, dude, you're shoulding all over yourself. You're shoulding. And I laughed. I took like a drink of coffee, and he said that, and I just laughed and almost spit out my coffee. It's like, wow, I'm really like letting a lot of kind of a sense of ought dictate what I'm doing instead of just what I want to do. So there you go.
Yeah, you're shooting all over yourself.
Yeah, because it's so vivid. Like, yeah, I'm shoulding all. I should do this. I should do that. And I'm just asking you to ask yourself, what do you really want more? This is what he said to me. I'm just asking you to ask yourself, what do you really want more? And he just mentioned, he said, look, I see pain points. You came into this saying, I'm trying to prioritize tasks. I'm trying to build a team. Would have built more courses, but I'm also doing this other business. And he said, it's hard mentally to be responsible for content for both brands. You can physically do it, but it's hard to grow two brands at the same time. And this person knows, because he had kind of a similar path. And so I, at that point, was like, this is why I feel so stuck, because I am trying to do all of it. I'm trying to run my personal brand and all of the things that come with that business, content, making sure that I have good lead capture, a lead magnet, great email funnels, and great offers. And with Preaching Donkey, great content, a great lead capture with lead magnets, a really good email funnel, and great offers, and keep all of those plates spinning all at the same time. Physically, I can probably do it. But when he said this, it's hard mentally to be responsible for content for two businesses. That's when I said, you know what? It's not just hard, it's dang near impossible. I have really, really struggled with it. And then he just said, this is your life. What do you want to do? Do you really feel like you're going to get to your goals, which for me is $100,000 a month? Right now, I'm at about $25,000 a month. I want to get to $100,000 a month. Am I really going to get there if I'm dividing my time and, at the very least, dividing my mental energy and creativity between these two brands? Or do you think you'll get more of what you want if you go all in with one of them? And to that, I just said, I think we both know the answer. I mean, right there on the call, I had completely just all but decided. It was just a matter at that point of working out the details. And what's funny is that, and this is why I think coaching is so important. So earlier that year, well, this was January, February, we had this conversation, maybe March. But a few months earlier, I had done my fall retreat. Every usually in the fall, I go away for a few days. And at this time I went to Arizona, and I plan out the following year, all the promotions I'm going to do, the content I'm going to do, the products I'm going to make. And I would do that for both businesses, for Lane Sebring and for Preaching Donkey. Well, in this case, I had read a book by Dan Sullivan called 10X is Easier Than 2X, not the one by Grant Cardone. That's different. This one is Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. And in the book, they talk about how if you want to reach a 2x goal, like if you want to 2x what you're doing, it's actually harder than 10xing. Because when you 2x, what you're doing is you're just doing everything you're already doing, but just double. Like you're just doubling your efforts, hoping to double the outcome. But to 10x requires focus. It requires letting go of things that you think are valuable and maybe have served your purposes and you've even been good at it, but it's not contributing to your ultimate goal, your ultimate vision, your 10x goal. So I read that book in November, went to Arizona, planning out my year, and I really thought I have got to walk away from Preaching Donkey, but I just can't. And so I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll hire an agency. That did not work. I'll try to make it as passive as possible. I'll hire a VA to manage everything, and I'll just do content. I'll try to get ahead on the content and stay ahead on the content. And I went into 2024 thinking that's how I'll do it. But every time I sat down to work on it, I had no energy for it. And you can't muster up the energy for something that you're not into anymore. You can't just make it happen out of nowhere because you only have so much physical and mental energy to give. And so, even though I read that in a book and I knew what I should do and I even prayed about it, I wasn't willing to walk away until I got coaching. And my coach looked at me and said, "Why are you still doing Preaching Donkey?" And that one question was enough for me to say, yeah, I need to focus. I need to focus. And knowing that is worth the cost of admission. Like if we stopped right here and I paid you $20,000 just to get me over the edge, ultimately, over time, that would be worth the price I paid because of what it does for me and my potential for growth in my business. Now, I quietly walked away from Preaching Donkey. What does that mean? I didn't go to Preaching Donkey and say, "Hey, thanks for following me for all these years. I'm just nuking everything. See ya. Thanks for the memories." I didn't do that. The books are still for sale on Amazon. All the content is still up on YouTube. You still can get the lead magnets if you go to the links that, take you to the lead magnets. Everything is still there. But I'm no longer adding additional content to it. Now, I completely gave myself permission to walk away, and I gave myself permission to come back to it at any time because I reserve that right. I may revisit Preaching Donkey and start doing content again at some point in the future if I get a renewed sense of energy for it. What's cool is that I mentioned, and this is just completely personal, it doesn't have much to do with business, but it's my channel. I had mentioned that I was worried a little bit about the calling. And what's cool is that the church that I'm currently attending, where I live here in Florida, has been incredibly gracious and has just welcomed me into a lot of things. And they've had me speak there. They've had me preach there at this point 7 times in the last 18 months. And in fact, that day that I made this decision, my pastor, I ran into him that night and he said, "Hey, are you available on February 18th? It sticks out in my mind. That was the date. He said, can you speak that day?" I was like, "Yeah." And so it hit me that I was like, I don't need to be employed by a church getting my W-2 from church. Thankfully, my business pays me tons of money and I don't have to have a job. So that's great. And I don't have to have Preaching Donkey in order to fulfill my calling. My calling is adequately being fulfilled in my local church where I preach and I volunteer. And I believe that what I do here at lanesebring.com, helping people make an impact by sharing what they know in their online businesses with the world and making not just an impact, but an income for their family, that is to me a type of ministry. And so I had to kind of get outside my own head and say, this isn't just about me having preaching donkey to validate like I'm still kind of a pastor. I don't that is an attachment of identity to what you're doing rather than who I am. I am a child of God, called by God to make an impact in the context that I live, and I'm doing that. And so all of that came from the coaching. And there was something else that he mentioned that if I wasn't already convinced that this was the right decision, this pushed me over the edge. He said, not only is it bad for you to continue because you don't have the energy for it mentally and physically, but you also do a disservice to your audience, both audiences, if you're dividing your attention and you're not fully passionate about one of them. Because for you to go to Preaching Donkey and try to muster up the energy to do content, you are not the best to teach those people. And I thought, wow, man, I've been thinking about this so selfishly. Like, how does this affect me? How's it going to affect my bottom line to walk away from this revenue, to shut down what I've been doing? And I hadn't even considered, well, what does it do for the people who are watching me when my content sucks because I'm not really into it? That's not fair to them. And it's not fair to my Lane Sebring brand because I'm not nearly as present as I need to be here to make the kind of impact that I need to make when I'm doing all this other stuff that is pulling my energy elsewhere. And so that is the big insight that I learned. Focus and being willing to walk away from my baby that is my creation, that was attached to my identity. In some circles, I am the preaching donkey guy. Probably not in the circles that you run in unless you came here from Preaching Donkey, but to like a small corner of the world, I was the preaching donkey guy. And it was a big part of my identity. And walking away from that took a lot of, I don't know, courage or something, but it ultimately was the better decision. My business is so much more focused. I'm more focused. I've been able to crank out way more work. The workshop that you're going to attend, lanesebring.com/workshop, is because of the mental clarity and focus that I have. 6-Figure Fastlane, my course over at lanesebring.com/fastlane, is a result of the focus that I've been able to get. There's lots of things happening here at I was going to say Preaching Donkey, at Lane Sebring, because I was willing to walk away from Preaching Donkey. So my question for you is, what should you be willing to walk away from in your online business? It is normal and natural and even necessary at first to try to do it all because you don't know what's going to work. I encourage you to treat it all like an experiment. But what are the things that have started to emerge as being the most high impact, high outcome activities? In other words, they're making the most money, they're making the most impact, and they fulfill you more than anything. What are the things that are starting to emerge like that? And then what are the kind of things that you're also doing that you could walk away from those things or put those things on the back burner for now so that they're no longer taking your mental energy, but you're able to fully focus on the things that are getting the best outcome? What is that for you? For me, it just happened to be this shift between Preaching Donkey and Lane Sebring. For you, I don't know what it is, but I'd love to hear in the comments. I'll see you inside the workshop over at lanesebring.com/workshop, and I'll see you in the next video.